My name is Winnie Frost, and I am co-chair, along with Chris Rich, of the Great Falls Citizen Association Parks and Environment Committee. Chris and I want to welcome you to our town hall on the proposed zoning amendment to create a dark sky preserve around the observatory at Turner Farm Park. The observatory is actually located at 925 Springville Road. Tonight, we have a distinguished panel of speakers, including our own Drainsville Supervisor, John Faust, and his assistant, Ben Wiles, Great Falls Citizen Association President, Bill Canis, Carmen Bishop, the Assistant Zoning Administrator with Fairfax County, Tammy Schwab with the Natural Resources Division of the Fairfax County Park Authority, and Jeffrey Kresh with the Analemna Society at Observation Park. Tonight, we hope this town hall will help broaden your understanding of the proposed dark sky ordinance, including how it can benefit our dark skies, our wildlife, ourselves, and in the process, help reverse light pollution in our area too. We also hope to provide a valuable forum for you to engage with our panelists on this important topic. After all the presentations are completed, we will have a Q&A session led by Jennifer Falcone, our Chief of Land Use and Zoning, whom you heard a little earlier. And now I'd like to introduce our own first panelist, Bill Canis, President of Great Falls Citizen Association. He will explain how our association initiated an effort to create dark skies preserve at our observatory. So Bill, take it away.
Thank you, Winnie. I hope everybody can hear me. And I first wanted to say and acknowledge the many hours and hard work that Jennifer and Peter Falcone and Winnie and Chris Rich, through their respective committees, have put into this issue over the years. Because we wouldn't be this far tonight without all of that hard work and good ideas that they put forward. So I first want to acknowledge the power of the volunteer. But just a few words about one of our favorite buildings in Great Falls. And as you know, the Connection this week had a front page story on them. So if anyone is online that isn't sure what we're talking about, here's a picture of the Observatory Park buildings over at Observatory Park, part of the Turner Farm Park. GFCA's involvement in this is because we do consider this building and this part of our park one of the most critical zones in our community. And we have been involved in this since January 2019, when the Planning Commission put forward a request to have comments on a new lighting ordinance for the county. At that time, GFCA wrote to the Planning Commission endorsing the initiative, but also saying that we didn't feel that the proposal from the Planning Commission went far enough. And we called for a number of improvements in the Planning Commission thought document. And one of them was, at that time, that the Planning Commission consider a dark sky preserve around the Observatory Park in Great Falls. So that was in January 2019. A year later, in January 2020, GFCA, Peter Falcone and I went down to the annual public comment session for the Environmental Quality Advisory Council, known as EQAC. Despite its unusual name, it plays a central role in advising the Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Faust is smiling at that because he's been involved with EQAC for many years himself. But EQAC provides a tremendous report once a year to the Board of Supervisors on a whole range of environmental issues before the county. And at that meeting in January 2020, we reiterated our desire to see a dark sky preserve built. And we believed that the Environmental Quality Advisory Council should incorporate that as part of their work plan. Subsequent to that, Supervisor Faust became very engaged, and he'll tell us about that tonight, I'm sure. And this became a significant matter in the county. So we are very thrilled that there are about this program tonight and the many different aspects of this. Winnie mentioned some of them, and then this ordinance, because retaining a dark sky in the vicinity of the observatory is critical to keeping that observatory there. If we have too many residential and street lights that would turn the environment of the Turner Farm Park into something similar to a Dulles Airport runway. The ability to see the stars, the planets, and to educate our young people about our solar system would be severely diminished. So it's really critical for us to get this right. And I think this program tonight will hopefully help answer questions that people have in our community and also generate a somewhat of a strong effort to see this through to the end in the near future. This is the only major observatory in Fairfax County. That it is placed here in Great Falls is a tremendous honor to this community. And this community needs to try to help bolster that in any way it can. And GFCA stands foursquare behind these efforts that are already underway here. So I wanted to just make it clear that we are not ambivalent about these proposals going forward. And I think that I'm also now going to introduce our next speaker, who is Supervisor Faust. One might say that after 4 terms as our supervisor, he doesn't need much of an introduction, but I'm still going to give him one because I've got the microphone. And so I would just say that John Faust is a graduate, as perhaps many of you know, from George Washington University Law School. He was president of the McLean Citizens Association at one time and deeply involved in other McLean area community groups before he was first elected to the Board of Supervisors in 2007. In this era of changing candidates who come and go so much, John has actually weathered a tremendous career as the Board of Supervisors, and he has been reelected 3 times since his first election, most recently in 2019. He chairs the Board of Supervisors Housing Committee and also the Economic Advisory Commission, 2 very critical parts of our community's work. And finally, I would just say this, before I turn the mic over to our supervisor, that he has been, in these many years as our supervisor, a tremendous advocate for Turner Farm Park in all of its components, and a little bit further down the road, the Grange Park. So we couldn't have a better friend in Fairfax County at the Board of Supervisors than John Faust to help reinvigorate and support our parks, the county parks that are here in Great Falls. So it's a great privilege for me to introduce John Faust.
Thank you so much, Bill. That was a very kind introduction. This is year 15 for me, and I've loved almost every minute of it, but I've especially loved working with Great Falls Citizens Association, particularly under your leadership. We've gotten a lot done, and by the same token, we've accomplished a lot by making sure other things didn't get done. So, it's been a great partnership, and I particularly like working with you. And I thank also Jennifer and Peter and Winnie and Chris for getting us to this point. A lot of what I was gonna say, Bill's covered in much better than I would have been able to. So thank you, Bill, because you were there. I mean, you were in the trenches. You got this thing. GFCA got this thing off the ground, got started, but we did adopt that new ordinance in 2020, and I think it's going to make a across the county difference in outdoor lighting standards and so forth. But this particular issue that we're here to talk about tonight is just critical. Bill made the point. To be able to have that observatory and to have it function the way it should function requires dark skies. I mean, it's that simple. I've gone to bat and gotten VDOT to waive requirements for streetlights near the observatory. We've all done our part to try to keep it as dark as we can. But the bottom line is, for our sake, for the future generations, we've got to do more. And this urban dark, this opportunity, that which we need to do. So there may be concerns. I have to be open-minded because, this is a public discussion. If there's serious concerns, I got to try to address them. But the fundamental result in the end must be that that observatory is usable and the amazing asset that it is. So I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight, and I can't wait to hear what everybody has to say. As usual, I know it'll be a very intelligent discussion. They always are in Great Falls. I appreciate that so much as a supervisor. The type of feedback and input I get just makes my job so much easier to do because I know where my community stands. So thank you. I will turn it over to the next speaker, who I'm not sure Tammy.
It's Winnie.
Okay, good. Turning it over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Faust. Thank you so much for your support and your kind words. And now I'd like to go ahead and introduce Tammy Schwab with the Park Authority, and also Jeff Kresh with the an Alumna Society. They're going to provide some history of Observatory Park and the benefits of a dark sky ordinance for astronomical opportunities and education at the site. So Jeff, I think you're beginning. Take it away.
Okay, I'll start out here. So I'm going to talk about the actual observatory that John mentioned. For those of you who haven't been here, this is what you're seeing on your screen there is actually a view of it as you come in. We don't have the signs on the buildings, but the first building you see there is a roll top. On the left is the actual observatory with the telescopes. There's 3 operational ones. And on the right is the classroom. Behind it is the RADO, which stands for Remote Access Telescope Observatory. We don't have a telescope up there at the time. That's a future project we're working on. And it's not accessible to the public. I get this question all the time, mainly because of the ADA requirements of, accessibility and things. But nonetheless, that's something which we hope to eventually connect with the internet. And so we do our indoor activities in the classroom and, of course, the observing in the roll top there. And basically that we've been doing this since about 2003. So it gives me about 20 years of experience. Charles Olin first started this effort. And I also want to thank John and Bill Canis for the support in getting this further along. So anyway, but that's the setup there. So if we go to the next slide here, Tammy, well, so now we actually see the activities. These are what we actually do. On the left are the outside activities. We do those quite often on the Friday nights. Right now, the roll top roof is down, so we don't use the inside. But you see in the center picture, that's actually the roll top observatory with the roof pulled back. So you can see the telescopes there. And you can see what we're all about, the children actually with the activities. So when we talk about future generations, as John mentioned, that's where the rubber hits the road here. So you see on the right also, we have, in addition to the telescope thing, we have a classroom activity there. And we do quite a bit of that with hands-on activities. So hands-on is a very big item here. We had about 7,500 visitors over the last 4 years by the best estimates I have. So that gives you an idea. And that was with the impact of the pandemic. And we get some of our attention from the things like the Washington Post actually listed us. So we do a lot of things for the community. So this one here, now this actually gets you to the effect of what does light pollution do to us and how it affects our activities. On the left, that's what we'd like the sky to look like. That's the constellation of Orion. A lot of people know that. You see all the stars in there. If you look at the right, and you got to look kind of hard, but you see the 3 stars in a row, that's what it actually looks like. You can just see the bright stars. We don't see all these dimmer stars. That's stuff that we can't show the kids when we go to the scouts. We have large areas of the skies that are lit that we'd like to be showing them the stars and stuff like that for like their constellation things. So that's a direct view there of what happens with the light pollution and what it costs us. It costs us seeing the stars. And so I guess let's go ahead and go to the next slide here and so this is a slide that we often use when we're actually giving our presentations. We're open Friday nights. We have a lot of various activities for park takes course and things like that. And I'm going to go down just the kind of objects we look at and the impact that light pollution has on all of them. And of course, we talk about the general things with the naked eye. We lose a lot of stars, lose a lot of contrast. With the major planets, the planets look fine, but we can't see the dimmest moons. We can't see the planet Pluto. That's something we'd like to better show people. So we lose a little bit there, but we're really hit hard on the deep sky objects. And that's most of the universe, frankly. And so we don't see as many stars and star clusters, a lot of nebulas, distant galaxies. We see only a fraction that we could see because of the light pollution. It just puts a background that kind of obliterates a lot of the object we could see. So we can't show people all the things we like to show them. We do the best we can with our limited resources and stuff like that, but it hits us in that sense. So as a sense, we definitely need darker skies for that. And of course, I just want to mention too, as everybody knows, that the observatory is a major asset. When people go to say, what do you have in this area? The observatory is one of them for things for entertainment, for education and things. And so with that, doing the impact, I'll pass it on to Tammy for what we're going to do about it, which is the hard part.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so I work for the Park Authority, and we work really closely with the NLMA Society and the educational pieces. And also I work for the Resource Management Division. So we manage natural and cultural resources. And the night sky is both a natural and a cultural resource. Here, this picture here represents what we call the Bortle scale. It basically, judges the what you can see in the sky based on where you are. So the observatory falls between probably about 5 and 6 on this scale. And unfortunately, that means that Observatory Park is not eligible to be an international dark sky park. To be able to do that, you have to have excellent or rural dark skies and be able to see the Milky Way. But we are eligible for a special designation from the International Dark Skies Association called an urban dark sky place. And so Jeff and I have been working on this application from about the time that you all started working on the ordinance with EQAC. Jeff got the idea to give this a try. We are actually applying to be an urban dark sky place. Our application was submitted before Christmas, and we're waiting to hear if we're going to be accepted for that. We really would like to thank Supervisor Faust for supporting us with a resolution to the Board of Supervisors in October. That really helped us boost our application. And basically, we're going to be working over the next 6 months with them to make sure we meet all of the guidelines for this particular designation. And one of the requirements we had to meet is to do a lighting inventory and a lighting management plan and make sure all the lights at the park actually meet the current ordinance. And it turned out that our walkway lights that were installed in 2016, which were compliant at the time, are now non-conforming because they were, the color temperature was a little bit too high. And we also had some comments from some visitors that said, yeah, it'd be nice if those walkway lights weren't as bright to help us with our night viewing. So we've gone and retrofitted these lights with red shields so that we changed the color temperature, and they're now fully compliant with the local ordinance, but also the red light helps to preserve night vision when we're doing our viewing. And so these are going to stay in place until we can raise enough money to replace each of these light bulbs with a new high-tech amber bulb, which we're planning to do in the future of the Park Authority, but we need to get a bunch of money to do that because these are highly specialized lights. So part of our application is celebrating International Dark Sky Week, raising awareness. We are judged on how much education we do. And so that's something that we definitely have to be a part of is International Dark Sky Week. This year It's April 22nd to 30th, 2022. And we've decided to celebrate this by doing a special activity, and we're going to call it One Dark Hour, where we're asking everyone in Fairfax County to turn off their lights between 9 and 10 p.m. on April 22nd. So if you turn out your house lights, go out and view the sky, see what kind of stars you can see. If you share this with your neighbors and they turn their lights off, you might be able to improve your own view of the sky and kind of see what you're missing when all those lights are on. We also have been working with the Girl Scout Council of the nation's capital, and they are going to be premiering a brand new dark sky patch that girls can earn. And we'll be premiering that at Riverbend, but we'll be offering it on a regular basis in the Park Authority and also at Observatory Park. If for some reason it's cloudy or rainy on April 22nd, we're going to actually postpone One Dark Hour until April 29th. And that's because on the 22nd and 29th, those are our free Friday viewings that we do at Observatory Park. So we really want to be out there at 9 o'clock to see what happens when the folks in Great Falls and in Fairfax County turn out their lights. So tell all your friends and participate with us in this One Dark Hour so that we can see that collective action and the value of everyone, working together on this, because light pollution is reversible. We can fix this pretty easily, and it doesn't even require turning out the light, just pointing it downward and lighting in a smart way rather than and just lighting everything all the time. So I appreciate your attention. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tammy and Jeff. And now we will move on to Carmen Bishop, Assistant Zoning Administrator for Fairfax County, who will do a presentation on the existing zoning ordinance for lighting and move on through the proposed dark sky preserve and other issues with a survey for the immediate neighbors. Go ahead, Carmen. Carmen, I think you may be muted still.
All right, sorry about that. Despite all our good practice, let me try that one more time. I was having trouble getting my screen working properly. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right, great. Okay, sorry about that delay. Thank you very much. Again, I'm Carmen Bishop, and I work in the Zoning Administration Division. And so that means that my portion of this presentation is going to talk about the zoning ordinance amendment. First, I am going to go over a bit of background on the proposed amendment, but then I'm going to go over the current regulations for outdoor lighting that are in the zoning ordinance, because it's important to consider any additional regulations in the context of the current regulations that apply countywide. Then I'm going to review some options that there could be for additional regulations as part of this amendment. I'll touch on that survey that Jennifer mentioned. I'll go over the timeline for the amendment, and then there will be that time for questions and discussion. So the current amendment topic, it's been mentioned already. It does stem from a follow-on motion that was approved by the Board of Supervisors in 2020 as part of the adoption of a zoning ordinance amendment that amended certain provisions for outdoor lighting. And that follow-on motion, it has been incorporated into the zoning ordinance amendment work program. And it does direct staff to consider additional zoning provisions to protect dark skies around astronomical facilities. And by that, we really do mean the Turner Farm Park Observatory, because it's truly our only observatory in the county. And so while dark skies can have many health and environmental benefits, the purpose of any additional regulations as part of this amendment would be to protect the night sky for the observatory. And the authority for these additional regulations is found in the state code, and it allows that any locality may by ordinance regulate outdoor lighting within an area of 1/2 mile around planetariums, astronomical observatories, etc. And so that does limit the area, the maximum area that these additional regulations could apply to the area that you see on this slide. This area includes a total of 525 parcels. 84 of those are zoned to the RE, or Residential Estate District. 200 are zoned to R1. 241 are zoned to R1, but developed under the cluster provisions of the zoning ordinance. And I think that low density residential land use pattern is a good place to be for protecting the observatory for night sky. So while we do live, as Tammy showed, the different Bortle scale, and while we do live in an area of significant light pollution, as Tammy said, this is a type of pollution that can be reversed. And so, as I mentioned, the purpose of this amendment would be to protect the observatory by minimizing glare and overlighting, because that sky glow can limit the effectiveness of the telescopes and then related research and educational programs. So that's why these additional regulations may be appropriate in the surrounding area for the observatory. So with that background, I'm going to move on to the current zoning ordinance regulations, and I'm just going to talk about the ones that apply to residential properties. There are additional regulations that apply to non-residential, but I'm not going to go over those tonight. So first off, fixtures are required to be what's called full cutoff and mounted horizontal to the ground. So full cutoff means that no light is emitted above the bottom plane of the fixture. In these types of fixtures, the light bulb, you're not going to see the light bulb. It's contained within the housing of the fixture. Light bulbs are also required to have a color temperature of 3000 K or less, and that K stands for Kelvin. We do get some questions about that, but Kelvin is the unit of measurement for color temperature, and it ranges from those warmer colors at the 3000 K and less that you see on the left side of the image on your screen, up to the higher numbers with that bright blue-white light. Now, your lower color temperature, it does reduce energy use and glare, and you're going to find this color temperature listed on the packaging for your light bulbs. You do have to read the fine print, but that information is available in the specifications. Now, the zoning ordinance does allow spotlighting of flags, landscaping, or other similar objects. So this does allow for some uplighting, but that light does need to be aimed and shielded to confine the light to the object. The zoning ordinance also requires that if a lot is adjacent to other residential, so that in this scenario, it doesn't matter what the subject property is used for. If it's next to another lot that's residential, then the lights on the subject property need to have a setback, and that setback is based on their height. And if they don't meet that setback requirement, they are required to have shielding that protects that neighboring residential use. The setback is based on the formula that you see. It might be hard to read actually in the box that's in the figure on the slide. But as an example, the formula would require or allow a maximum mounting height of about a little over 9.5 feet if you had a setback of 20 feet from the lot line. And I just picked 20 feet for my calculation because that's the side setback in the R1 district. So if you don't have that, you would need to have the additional shielding, as I said. And this applies to both pole mounted and building mounted lights. The zoning ordinance allows light poles that are 7 feet high or less to be located anywhere on your lot. But if they are taller than that, they do need to meet the height and location standards like other freestanding accessory structures. The zoning ordinance also requires all sports fields and courts, and this is including on your single family lots. So this would include like your tennis court, your basketball court, your swimming pool. If they're illuminated and they comprise over 10,000 square feet, or the light poles are 20 feet high or more, they are required to have an approved sports illumination plan. And the zoning ordinance has additional requirements for those plans, and they're reviewed through the Land Development Services Department. Now, there are exceptions to these requirements, though. On lots that are developed with single family dwellings, lights do not need to be full cutoff. And they also don't need to meet that setback shielding requirement that I mentioned if the light fixture has 1,500 lumens or less, or for your motion activated or security lighting, they can actually have up to 4,000 lumens if the light turns off within 5 minutes of the motion ceasing and the light is directed within the property. We do get some questions about lumens. They are a measurement of like your light brightness, your light output. It's different from watts, which measure your electrical energy consumption, but those numbers can be converted. So as an example, a 100-watt incandescent bulb is about equal to that 1500 lumens. And a 250-watt incandescent bulb is approximately equal to the 4000 lumens. Lumens are listed on your light bulb packaging, sometimes on the bulb itself. And sometimes you're seeing now a watts equivalency on the packaging. So you do need to, again, look at the fine print when you're making your purchases. Holiday lighting is also exempt under the zoning ordinance. And then because the zoning ordinance has been amended over time and regulations are typically prospective, that means that it's possible that some older fixtures are allowed to remain, even if they do not comply with the current requirements. So with that background, looking at some of the options that might be available for additional regulations, one category of things to consider would be eliminating or reducing some of those exemptions that I mentioned. So instead of the 1500 lumens, there could be a requirement that all lights are full cutoff, or perhaps some exemptions are allowed. Perhaps there's an exemption for a light at your front door, but maybe it has less than 1500 lumens. Or maybe you do allow exemptions, but you reduce the 1500 lumens to something that less. For the mission activated lights, instead of the 4000 lumens, you could require them to be all full cutoff, but I'll note, I don't think that's how most people want their security lighting design. Most people want it angled out a bit so that it might illuminate your driveway as somebody's approaching, or the side yard as you're taking out the trash. But the lumens could be reduced from that 4000. Another category of additional regulations would be to add additional requirements. There could be additional limits on lumens for all lights, even if they're full cutoff. It could also be considered to reduce that 3000 K color temperature, but I'll say I think that is in the range of what most recommendations are. Most of the time you're seeing recommendations for 2700 to 3000 K, and we're right in that range. So on this screen, I'm not recommending this for Fairfax County, but I think it's worth taking a look at to see how lighting regulations can potentially be structured. So this comes from the International Dark Sky Association Model Lighting Ordinance. It's a little bit dated to 2011, but as I said, it's still worth taking a look at to understand what some options might be. So in their ordinance, they have different light zone areas. So the LZ0 are areas that are characterized by like a wilderness preserve or an astronomical observatory. Light zone 1 is areas for like low density residential where you want low ambient lighting. So just for this exercise of walking through this table, I'm going to look at that column for the LZ1. And then row 1 would say that you could have one light that's not full cutoff at your front door, and it's limited to 420 lumens. Row 2 would say that you can have your full cutoff fixtures, but they are also limited to 1260 lumens. Row 3 then is saying that in addition to that one light at your front door, you could have other lights that are not full cutoff, but they're limited to 315 lumens. Rows 4 and 6 are saying you don't have any landscape lighting, none of those fairy lights and so forth that people like. And then row 5 says no flood lighting. I think that's typically, sometimes that's motion activated and sometimes it's not, but no flood lighting. But what's I think encouraging to note is that dark sky compliant fixtures are available. So I'm not going to say it's easy because there are many fixtures and bulbs that you can go and find to purchase that don't comply, but they are available. So I went on homedepot.com. I typed in dark sky light in my search box and I got a lot of results that are available. The ones on the left, those are all dark sky compliant fixtures. The one on the right, of course, you're seeing that light bulb. It's not dark sky compliant. It may comply with our current zoning ordinance, however, because if that light bulb is 1500 lumens or less, that would be allowed at a single family dwelling as an exemption. Now for the survey that, in fact, I think it is live right now. It's just going to be an online survey available at that link. we'll be sending out the postcard that you see on this slide. And this survey is intended just for those who are property owners within that half a mile area. Other folks, we definitely welcome your input. You can send an email to the Ordinance Administration Division, but for this survey, as I said, it's for the people within that area. And I want you to know it's very short. It's really easy. I encourage you to take the survey. It does have you step through some background information, but if you have lived through this presentation, you probably don't need to review it, but it'll be there for your reference. But again, it's a short, easy survey, and we'd love to receive your feedback. And that survey is going to be open for about a month. And then following that, we do want to put together, based on research and all of the feedback that we receive, some draft amendment options, actual text for people to review and consider, and do some additional outreach on that. And then potentially it could go to authorization in the fall and public hearings in the fall or winter. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I think we're at the questions and discussion part.
Actually, Carmen, you may have missed it. We have one additional speaker, and that's going to be Rob Fenimore. And then we will go into Q&A. So Rob, if you could unmute right now, then we will share, Peter will share and control the slideshow, and you can introduce yourself and your background on developing this slide presentation here. So let's see.
Okay, can
Okay,
you hear me?
Yes, we can, and I hope we chose the right one. I know you made a correction, but I think this is the right one. I apologize. If not, we'll just talk through the changes.
I'll just talk. It's the third slide okay. All right, I'm Rob Fenimore. I'm an imagery scientist with the federal government, but I did this on my own time here at home. So using the same kind of data I work with at work often. This is called VEERS. Go to the next slide. The data that VEERS is the Visible and Infrared Radiometer Suite. It flies on a NOAA satellite. It collects once every night about 1:30 in the morning. It's really hypersensitive to nighttime lights coming up from the ground. In an otherwise dark environment, it can detect a 100-watt incandescent light bulb, despite the fact that it has 750 meter pixels. Pixels is 750 meters on a side. That you might think, oh gosh, that's a coarse resolution, but that's typical for weather satellites. That conversely, though, it can collect a huge area. Like one image will cover almost the continental United States. For this study, I use some monthly composited images where they take an entire month's worth of data and average it all together. And this way you average out lunar illumination and cloud cover, because the clouds tend to move around from night to night. And the units that the sensor collects is radiance. If you look up radiance, you'll see that it's in watts per centimeter squared per steradian. Some of you may know what a steradian is. I'm not going to try and explain it. I'm going to show you a chart of what the radiance measurements were for the study area, which I delineated in a KML file that is described here, as going from Seneca Road and Route 7 along the river down to the Great Falls Waterfall, down to Difficult Run, out Difficult Run, back to Route 7. Springville Route 7 kind of has a little kink in it, so I added a point at Springvale Road and Route 7, then back to Seneca Road and Route 7. And I also showed the Drainsville district and some of the other districts. And now the upshot of the chart, which we'll see soon, is that the radiance hasn't really increased that much, but if you were to draw a straight line through the data, it looks like there was a slight increase. Now, what was kind of surprising to me was that there are these big seasonal variations. It's brighter in the winter, and I think that's probably due to the trees being in a leaf-off condition. And this way, all of the this is just in the relatively rural area of Great Falls, where a lot of the light is due to residential illumination getting up through the tree canopy in the winter, whereas it's kind of blocked in the summertime. So here you see it goes from 2012, February 2012, when the sensor came to life, all the way up to this past February. Anyway, you can see those big fluctuations, that the peaks in the wintertime, the troughs in the summertime. And you can kind of go back through, you might think that, there was times in certain years where we had really heavy cloud cover and really warm weather in the fall. So that might prolong the leaf cover later into the fall. So if you go back and review all the meteorological data and all the other factors. Anyway, I'm gonna go through the visual presentation now. I overlaid the monthly VIIRS data for February of 2012, February of 2017, and February of 2022. At the beginning, the middle, and the end of the study period, over top of aerial photography that the state of Virginia provides. Of course, now over in Maryland, I guess I could have got some data from Maryland, but anyway, over here in February 2012, you can see features like you can see Tyson's Corner kind of in the middle of the image. You see Reston, you see Arlington, you see Sterling. And if you go to the next slide, now we see 2017 and 2022. And if you examine this closely, you can see kind of the expansion of Tyson's Corner, Reston, just, the ongoing development. And if you were to go out further into Sterling or, Loudoun County, you probably see dramatic increases in lights out there. So anyway, you might say, okay, well, how does this, and then we're going, honing in on the study area, which is delineated in blue. Now you see that bright spot in the middle there, that's the village center. And then you can also see lights down, especially out by where Seneca, where the dog hospital is, and the CVS out there, and then all the lights along Route 7. There's another area, kind of a bright spot, all too close to where the observatory is. I'm not sure what all that is from, but it's there. And it's really dark, out towards the Potomac River and along Difficult Run and up by Seneca Regional Park. And you can go on to the next slide and got to 20. Let's see, yeah, okay, we got. All right, we're kicking through the slides pretty quick here. Let's go on to the next one. This is just reiterating that the bright spots are along, where I described. And then, of course, I think I already stated all this, where the, and you might say, okay, well, and then this is a slide that Peter provided, shows an even larger area. Peter, where did you get this slide, this data? You said you got it from NOAA?
Yeah, this is NOAA radiance day-night imaging. Basically, it's on the public internet.
Okay.
Well, I annotated it with some landmarks here, this being the Route 7 corridor, which we can see that runs pretty hot up through Loudoun County up to the Fairfax County line. And then the area you previously pointed out, which is our village center, the shopping center, and then the Seneca Seneca Georgetown Pike Route 7 intersection. And this is general. I tried to drop this in the general area of where the observatory is. I couldn't be very precise with that, but the observatory is between two hot, bright areas. And we can see that there's a lot of, there's increase in this kind of radiance in this area.
Yeah. Okay. And everybody might be thinking, okay, well, why is this significant? This radiance is coming up. It's coming up to space. But what happens is some of it gets scattered back down by the atmosphere, especially if it's a little hazy out. That's what makes it hard to see the stars at night. If the atmosphere was completely crystal clear, all this light would just go straight out to space and wouldn't prevent you at all from seeing the stars. You'd see the Milky Way, you'd see everything. But unfortunately, the atmosphere scatters back a lot of this light back down to the ground. And so it gets in your face when you're trying to look up at the stars. And it's kind of as simple as that. I guess I guess we're on to the general question and answer session.
Yes, we are. Thank you very much, Rob. Back to question and answer. And I see that we have a few questions in the Q&A area of the webinar. And I just wanted to remind everyone that you can type in your questions in the Q&A section, and we will open up the microphones for the participants here, and they will be able to address each question. So right now, I see first question: would applying a dark sky compliant lighting in the half-mile radius help us achieve the higher status? And I think that question popped up, if I'm not mistaken, during Tammy's discussion. So Tammy, if you could answer that question for us, please. Thank you.
Sure. I would love to say yes, but I don't think, because of the proximity that we have to Tyson's and DC, that I don't think we can move our Bortle scale that much as far as what we can see. So we could definitely improve our dark sky viewing and what we can see, but getting to the point where we can see the Milky Way, unless we have full compliance from Tyson's in Washington, DC, I don't think that would make it to a dark sky park. And I think that's one of the reasons they created the urban dark sky place, which is what we're applying for, is because of our proximity to an urban area. So yeah, we can improve our Bortle scale, but I don't think we'll ever be able to see the Milky Way without, again, full compliance from Tyson's and DC, which, in my lifetime would be awesome, but not likely.
Thank you, Tammy. I see two more, one basically a question statement, or a statement and another question. I think we'll take the first one. It was from Sarah Kirk, who had to leave the Zoom, as you all know or may not know. Sarah Kirk is the resident curator at the Turner Farm House, and she wanted to thank the Fairfax County Park Authority for helping them install dark sky compliant lighting at the Turner Farmhouse. And she says that she loves the events that Jeff and his team put on at the observatory, and that Dark Skies have her full support. So we really appreciate that Sarah was able to attend. And I know that she worked very hard to go through the proffers in her special exception to maintain dark sky compliant lighting. And then we have another question on the board here that asks, someone is asking, why not relocate the observatory to the darkest part of the area, namely Riverbend Park? I don't know that would be feasible with all of the infrastructure that is at the Turner Farm Observatory at this time. So we have a couple of other questions popping up here. First one says, how would the reduced lighting affect driving conditions given the curves on Springvale Road? Would someone like to take a stab at traffic analysis at this point?
Well,
Carmen?
I might add that the zoning ordinance amendment does not affect areas within the right of way. So safety lighting is very carefully reviewed by the county through the Department of Public Works. And so any zoning ordinance amendment change is not going to affect the safety on the roads.
Thank you, Carmen. And I know, correct me if I'm wrong, Supervisor Faust, when the GFCA works with the county in order to get street light waivers, VDOT has reviewed this carefully, and that they are just saying that there is sufficient lighting in the area already. They can waive some street lights in certain areas, but right now VDOT is working to make shielding on existing lighting so that it is directing most street lights in a downward manner so that we are protecting our dark skies. Is that correct?
Yes, VDOT will try to accommodate our request, but they are not going to put safety in a secondary, treat it as secondary. That if they don't think that the streets are safe without the lighting that they propose, they're not going to approve the request. It's difficult to get them to even consider a request, but once they do, if you can demonstrate that the safety is not going to hampered, you can get the waiver. But they're tough, and you want them to be tough. Competing interests here, obviously, but safety should always be first and foremost.
Thank you. We have another comment that says that this seems very one-sided, basically advocates this is a like to have as opposed to safety, which is a must. We have not heard from the police about lighting and safety. So Tammy, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that there's been a lot of studies on lighting and safety, and that good lighting design is safer than bad lighting design. So we're not saying that we need everyone to turn off every single light. We are just advocating that those lights are designed well, for example, pointed down rather than pointed up. We could potentially provide some studies for you to see that, that there has been 0 studies that have proved that brighter lighting is actually safer. And that in the case that brighter lighting also creates glare and sharp shadows. And so that actually sometimes is more dangerous than the soft lighting that we're advocating for. So that's something that I'm happy to, talk with folks about, good lighting design. Again, we're not asking everyone to turn every light off and not have any lights, but the way you point your light and the amount of glare that you allow makes a big difference in astronomy, but also, safety and wildlife and plants as well. So love to get into that with you and give you some resources about how to have safe lighting that's also dark sky friendly.
Thank you, Tammy. We have a statement that George Mason University has an observatory on campus, so Fairfax has 2 observatories. Thank you very much for that information. It's something that I was not aware of personally, so we will make sure that we correct that in our program here. Let's see. It says also, can you allow astrophotography from the park after dusk from between 9 p.m. until 3 or 4 a.m.? I think, Tammy, you're going to give us some hours about park limitations.
Yeah, so most parks close at dusk. This park, because it's a dark sky park, and this is part of the use of that park, we actually allow permitting. So if you decide this is something you want to do, you can apply to our permit office to use the park on prearranged basis to do these things. And so that would just be a park permit. And we don't typically, approve these for most of our parks, but this particular park is for that purpose. And so you can use our permit process to use the park in that way.
Thank you, Tammy. How about Jeffrey? How often is the observatory in use? Can you talk a little bit about the frequency of the programs? You're muted, Jeff.
These people
Thank you.
notice it's muted. Okay. Yeah, probably about 2 to 3 times a week we have courses. Of course, you have Friday nights when it's clear with an event. So I'd say about, at times we get very busy, 2 to 3 times a week using that, and it's weather dependent and things. So we get a fair amount of usage out of that, but it's volunteer work, so it's not paid employees. So we have to get people to volunteer to support this.
Thank you, Jeffrey. We have a comment. If we're so concerned about dark skies, John Faust should be pushing for a minimum 5-acre lot for residential areas to get rid of all of this lighting. Anyone want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, sounds like a down zoning. I'm not sure that is legal, but well, I know it's not legal. So
Thank you, John.
he is trying to preserve what we got, not get it, not have more dense development than is already zoned on the properties.
Thank you very much. And that's something that we in the GFCA do work for whenever any new development comes through and to see if there's any special exceptions, and we appreciate your assistance with all of that. Next question, will there be compensation to homeowners who have to change lights? And if a substantial change in lighting standards is made, will the county compensate neighboring residents for the loss in their investment in landscape lighting, as would be the case with eminent domain? Will the county accept liability for injuries that may occur from this reduction of lighting? So I think, Carmen, could you talk about whether or not something would be retroactive, and then give us a few thoughts about that? Thank you.
Yeah, typically zoning ordinance amendment changes, they are prospective. So if you have existing lighting, then it would be allowed to remain. And you can see this in our current regulations. It kind of like steps you through time. For instance, the requirement for I think the full cutoff fixtures went in 2003. Then in 2020, we added the color temperature standard. And so that's why you do see older lights that don't comply with the current zoning ordinance, but they're allowed to remain. But once you do replace that fixture, you are expected to comply with the new regulations. So, so there wouldn't be any loss in investment in that way.
Thank you, Carmen. How will enforcement be handled to ensure compliance? Fines is the question mark. And again, I think if you could briefly give us 2 words on code compliance.
Yeah, the Department of Code Compliance does enforce zoning and other regulations, and it is based on complaints. So people can file complaints, and they will go out and they will investigate. And their goal is always compliance. So they don't just immediately, they actually issue a notice of violation, and that can lead to a fine. But their goal is education and compliance first and foremost, but it is on a complaint basis.
Thank you, Carmen. Next question we have here, since you said we are between at least 2 bright spots, how much improvement do you expect from the half-mile area? You said it would improve, but not by how much. Do you calculate? Half the sky in my backyard is illuminated by Tyson's. That will remain regardless of what you do in the half-mile radius. So I think actually Peter would like to say something. And again, I would have to say that I would be curious as to whether or not this person who's asking the question is within the half-mile radius or outside. But go ahead, Peter.
I'll take a stab at it. And first, the half-mile radius in this ordinance arises because the Commonwealth of Virginia has a law on the books, and I think maybe Carmen mentioned that, which provides that localities can adopt measures in their ordinances within a half-mile radius. Now, because of the nature of things in the legislative process, your question says Tyson's, but regrettably, this ordinance is restricted by the enabling legislation. So we can't consider an area beyond that. So that's one aspect. The other is vigilance by residents to monitor what they might consider to be inappropriate lighting in terms of the lighting ordinance, whether it's commercial or residential, and to notify the code compliance office if they believe they have a residence or a commercial operation that is exceeding the standards that are set by the county ordinance.
And I think that if we tried to, I don't know that we would be able to calculate something based on the information that we have, but I think we could go back to Tammy's slide where we can see the obvious differences in up lighting versus down dark sky compliant lighting, and the absolutely positive effect that it does have on being able to see the dark skies. Last comment that I see here is I fully support your application. Have you educated residents on the negative impacts of artificial lights at night on health, sleep patterns, plants, insects, and wildlife. And Tammy would like to answer this, and I think then that Jeffrey may have a comment as well with the educational program. So first Tammy, then Jeffrey.
Thanks. Yeah, so this is part of the requirements that are going to be followed for the International Dark Sky Association designation. So just for this year's Dark Sky Week, we're creating a light pollution page for the county that is going to explain what light pollution is and talk about the benefits of dark skies in relation to insects, wildlife, plants, those sort of things. So we're beginning that campaign. We have been doing some of this stuff since 2012 when we started changing our sports lighting to be more dark sky compliant. So some of this education has been going on, but it's only going to increase. And we created a new patch for the Girl Scouts Council of the nation's capital. So we'll be teaching the younger generation all about dark skies, from now into perpetuity, and keeping track of that is part of what we have to do. We have to have a report every year of how much education we do. And it won't be limited just to the observatory. That's where things are going to sort of start from, but it's going to bloom all across the county, and we're going to spread this education as far and wide as we can.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
And I think I'll add, having worked in this for a while, I don't see safety as an issue against it. It's an integral part of this, that smart lighting is safe lighting. And the thing like, for example, a dark area or dark resident, that's not friendly to crime. It's not friendly to, safe people. And a well-lit area is much safer than a bright area with a light shining in your eyes. So the safest lighting actually is the minimal lighting that's well placed and smartly placed. And so it's not really a conflict at all if this is done right. They really work together very well.
Thank you, Jeffrey. That's our last written question, but I do notice that there's an attendee with their hand up. So what I'll say is we're going to allow that person to ask their question and urge any other attendee, if you have your raise hand icon, if you would like to be unmuted so that you can ask a question. We have a few more minutes left, but Rob Carney, you can unmute and ask your question.
Thank you very much. Is it possible this could become a very important awareness campaign that we could all get behind rather than an ordinance that would be potentially policed, if you will, with sanctions and fines behind it?
Well, we would, as I'm speaking for the Land Use and Zoning Committee at this point, and discussions that we've had in our committee, we certainly support getting the education out there and a grassroots movement. I know that I'll let Winnie and Chris speak about their committee, but I think that is absolutely what the observatory would like as well. But this is because of the fact that there is enabling legislation that will allow this. I think it's important that we actually investigate, and that's what this is. Well, this is a proposed amendment to the ordinance so that we can see what the community thinks and move forward. And we believe strongly that we can put some restrictions in place that are not overbearing and that will provide certain protections to the observatory. Go ahead, Peter.
I'll just tack on to your comments that the Land Use and Zoning Committee and GFCA in general, including the president, Bill Canis, Jennifer and Bill and others have been involved in outreach in specific cases with homeowners, new home construction, where they have installed lighting that was outside the scope of the dark skies. And unfortunately, without an ordinance, there's no teeth. You can't enforce it. You can engage in outreach, you can engage in education, but if the homeowners believe that they will not choose to follow that dictum, then dark skies will suffer. So the ordinance is the opportunity to put some teeth into the process. It's not the first choice, obviously, but it's something to consider. And we're fortunate that the state legislature took that action and provides these protections to observatories. Otherwise, we would have huge controversy and a collision of culture, so to speak.
Okay, thank
I'd
you,
also
Peter.
like to say that our Environment and Parks Committee next month will actually have Tammy at our meeting on April 11th to discuss dark skies and in more detail some of the things she was talking about tonight. And if you're interested in attending, you can go to the Citizen Association newsletter and go down to upcoming events and click on it and join our meeting or get in contact with Chris or myself. So this will be our second meeting about dark skies. We had one last fall also at the observatory. And we'll continue to do these things to continue to get the outreach and the information out. But golly, everybody on this call, part of the group here, it's spread the word. So that's also
Thank you. Winnie, you just froze up there a minute.
a wonderful way to get information out.
Thank
I
you,
know,
Winnie.
in the worst luck ever.
Thank you, Winnie. I see two comments from Gary. Jeffrey's comments seem opposite from what the police have to say about lighting. And then the question raised about Tyson's lighting was not answered. I think Peter missed the point. We're going to allow you to talk, Gary. So if you would like to unmute yourself, I think that maybe you could explain what you're asking about Tyson's.
Well, the question, as I understand it, that you read, and I didn't ask the question, but someone claimed, and you raised a good point, whether that person's in the half-mile radius, claiming that, you know, most of the lighting is really coming from Tyson's. And what difference would it make if we did whatever proposals would come forth in our area if Tyson's is still generating so much lighting? So that was the question. I thought it's an interesting question because if essentially whatever proposal comes down the pike can't make that much difference because of Tyson's and the other large generating areas, then it's not worth the trouble for people to make whatever changes would be required. So that's why I think the question was important. But I do think your question about to the person who raised it is, are they in the half-mile radius? Because they're the ones who are claiming that they see the Tyson's lighting in their backyard.
Since you mentioned that I missed the point, I'll respond that it's important to look at the area within that half-mile radius and work out within that scope of the proposed ordinance, because there are, and we're aware as a community organization, that there are violations today that could be corrected, but they won't be corrected unless there's an authority. Efforts have failed. Outreach is not being successful in all cases. So I think we have to work within that radius first. And then, as I suggested, if someone believes that the lighting is excessive or violates county ordinance for commercial lighting, I think there's an opportunity to pursue that through code compliance. And perhaps the staff can speak to that. But
The question is whether it will make a difference.
well, I think the science has to be taken into account. We saw tonight the first glimpse into that with Rob Fenimore's presentation, where we actually have some science that we can rely on to see what's happening in the skies. And we have to use that to understand what's happening today and what can be done in the future.
Tammy, go ahead.
I think it's important to note that this is a dark sky preserve sort of overlay district, which means we want to keep it from getting worse, right? So it's not necessarily we're going to be retroactive, though we hope that the education would encourage people to change. The idea is to protect it for the future so it doesn't get worse. And I do agree that, you know, we saw those slides where you can see the lights from space in every place differently, right? So you saw dark spots in Great Falls and you saw light spots in Great Falls. And so it does make a difference. Even though we're close to Tyson's, that, you know, Tyson's is going to have some sky glow, but there's a lot more to light pollution than just sky glow. There's, you know, glare and trespass and all kinds of different things that are going on with light pollution on a local level. So I do think we can make a difference in our little spot. And I think we could see that difference from space if we actually do this. But really think about this as a future thing. Like the lights will not get any worse, and the more we educate, the lights will get better. That's how I'm looking at, rather than trying to fix everything in one shot and make everybody change everything backwards. It's really, let's educate people, let's move forward and protect as we grow and there's more pressure.
Thank you, Tammy. Getting to the last couple of questions before we close out, it says, let's see, Jeffrey's comments seem opposite from what the police say about lighting. I think that I would urge people to either go to the observatory. There are some great brochures there about lighting, and also on darksky.org. You can see that light for light's sake does not equal safety. Jeffrey was talking briefly, and it's too long to go into this evening, but you can be blinded by the glare of a bright light and someone could be standing right next to you and you wouldn't even know it. Whereas if you had the appropriately placed and shielded light, you may be able to see someone that is blocked out by the glare. That is the theory of appropriate lighting. So I would say that we all should take a look at that. And then it says, but didn't Rob F say that in 10 years light had only increased minimally or slightly, and yes, there's been an upward trend. It's gradual, but we live by the theory of, we have to, as Tammy said, we have to do something now. We have to work towards this goal. If we don't do anything, then obviously there could be bright lights everywhere next to the observatory. So these are just things that we've put out there. We urge everyone to send comments to the EP committee and to the land use and zoning. That's environment@gfca.org and also zoning@gfca.org. Someone says, I have invested thousands in security lighting because my neighborhood by the park is pitch dark and there are coyote, fox, snakes, and deer around my house on a regular basis. Well, this new plan will help if a few hobbyists. It will engage my pets, my family and pets. Okay, well, I thank you for your comment. Let's see, I think that does anyone else have any other questions? Carmen, I see you wanting to make a comment.
I do just want to say briefly that any zoning ordinance amendment that's proposed, it's going to, try to strike a balance, as they always do. And safety and security is of course important. Nobody would ever, I can't envision a zoning ordinance amendment that said you can't have any lights. So there will still be lighting, but could additional regulations protect the observatory investment from overlighting in the immediate vicinity? In theory, that certainly could be worthwhile. So I think that as we work forward to develop some draft text for review, I think you'll see that, that nobody's going to suggest that you not have any lights, that there will be a balance.
Thank you, Carmen. I think that is the exact same quote that I think we should all take into account. There needs to be a balance so that those that wish to protect this in this immediate area can, and that it's not going to become a burden on those who wish to have landscape lighting. I think Rob has his hand up, and then I'm going to go to the closing remarks. So go ahead, Rob. We have like 30 seconds.
Okay, I just want to clarify that I made that calculation on that chart for just within the blue box. That is the study area that Peter instructed me to use. Now, if I was to go further out and say use the Fairfax County boundary to chip out the image, I'll bet I would get a huge increase over those 10 years. So
thank you for the clarification, Rob.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That is very helpful. Okay, so closing remarks, Winnie and Chris.
Jennifer, thank you so much for organizing us tonight and for the Q&A. In closing, I want to give a special thanks to Supervisor John Faust for taking the time to join us this evening. I'd like to thank our presenters, Jeff Kretsch, Tammy Schwab, Carmen Bishop, and Rob Fenimore. Thank you all so much. Please join us in celebrating Dark Skies Month in April. Remember to turn your lights off for an hour on April 22nd. Come join us at the observatory. On behalf of the Great Falls Citizens Association, the Fairfax County Parks Authority, and the NLMA Society, thank you all for joining us tonight, and thanks for this discussion. We are adjourned, and thank you for coming. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.